الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد، قال الله الحكيم في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Our series of discussions go into its fourth night. There's a tradition which says that when Allah favors someone, He puts a speck of nur in their heart. This light that He puts in the heart of the believer, of a person, has two dimensions to it. The first dimension is that that person is pulled towards the dhikr of Sayyid al-Shuhada. The second dimension is that that person is pulled to the ziyarah of Sayyid al-Shuhada. The ziyarah of Sayyid al-Shuhada has nothing to do with wealth. I've seen myself that people in their daily life, even if they're not breaking even in their daily life, but somehow 3 or 4 times a year they go to Sayyid al-Shuhada. We have traditions on this, that money which is spent on the ziyarah of Sayyid al-Shuhada comes back to you again. In fact, it's the lutf of the Imam that if a person is ever broke and they make it a policy in their life to go to the ziyarah of Sayyid al-Shuhada, you'll find that Allah will take them out of that situation and Allah will make them rich. So remember one thing, when a person is favored, when that nur of wilayah hits your heart, then immediately your ishq of Hussein increases. Your yearning for Sayyid al-Shuhada increases. Those tears that you shed for Hussein increase. This is why ulama have said that on a Thursday night, listen to the Masaib of Imam Hussein. Maybe it'll awake your heart in such a way. Maybe there may be something in your heart. Therefore, when you look at Shi'ism itself, Shi'ism is what? Shi'ism actually is mawadda for Ahlul Bayt. And the milak of that mawadda is the fact that you have ishq of Hussein. Look, mawadda is an active form of love. Mawadda is a type of love. I'll give you an example. There are multiple different terminologies for love, particularly in the Arabic language. Hub is something that you have in your heart, but mawadda is an expression. It isn't just sufficient for it to be in your heart. It must be expressed. And the first movement of expression is negating all of that which is against that love. I'll give you an example. If a person loves you, it's possible that they could come in this masjid. They could love you, but they could also love your enemy as well. As so happens in any center. You could love 2 people who are opposed to each other. But if you have mawadda for a person, it means whoever you love, I love. And whoever you dislike, I dislike. That is mawadda. So where does it begin? Mawadda begins on the maqam of negation. This is why if you look at it, when you recite kalam of tawheed, Allah doesn't say believe in me first. Allah says negate all of that which is against me. So you begin by tabarra, by saying la ilaha, and then you come to tawalla illallah. In this way, you don't need to ask, is Ziyarat Ashura Sahih or not? Ziyarat Ashura itself tells you that it's Sahih. Why? Because it begins on negation by doing la'an on the enemies of Hussein, and then it goes on to salam on Hussein. In this way, the entire tertib of Ziyarat Ashura, and we can prove the sanadi discussions another time. But Ziyarat Ashura itself, the tertib of Ziyarat Ashura tells you that it's tawheed is from Allah. Why? Because Islam is different. Islam begins on a negation. It begins on removing the najasat in the heart, the darkness in the heart. When the najasat is removed, only then can nur come into it. So if you want to understand how ishq of Hussein comes, how wilaya of Hussein comes, how mawadda of Hussein comes, the first movement is to remove the negativity in your heart. Only then can you come to understand what Hussein is. You see, what is la'an, what is tabarra? Essentially, it's removing the negative qualities out of your heart and instilling your heart with the positive ones. So if you are to go on a ma'araj, if you are to find peace in your life, remember one thing, peace isn't material. You can have all of the money in the world, you can have all of the comfort in the world, and you still come to know that you're suffering. This is why we've seen in your life, what Imam Hussein said is true. If a person has Allah, it doesn't matter if the whole world is against him. You see that person is in peace. And if the person has the whole world, you come to realize it doesn't have Allah, it's nothing. When Allah wants somebody to rise, they rise. How does a person rise? Allah says in the Quran, هُوَ الَّذِي أَنزَلَ سَكِينَةَ فِي قُلُوبِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Allah is the person who puts sakina, taskeen into the hearts of the believer. Where does this taskeen come? Ultimately, it doesn't require material wealth. Taskeen comes into the heart of a person when they come to know Allah. How does a person come to know Allah? When they come to know that wilaya. This is why the 8th Imam has said, he says this La ilaha illallah, this kalama tawheed is what? Hisni, faman dakhala hisni, amina min adabi. If a person enters the fort of this kalima, of this La ilaha illallah, they're preserved from the wrath of Allah. They're preserved from that wrath. But one of the conditions, the shart of this is that wilaya of the Imam. When that wilaya of the Imam is actualized, in fact the batin of Tawheed is actualized. When the batin of Tawheed, maqam al-Tawheed is actualized, then peace comes into the heart. Look, Tawheed is a maqam, but above the maqam of Tawheed is the maqam of Wahda. And we're not even here to discuss the maqam of Wahda at the moment. We're here to discuss maqam al-Tawheed. Maqam al-Tawheed is bringing together multiplicity into the state of unity. It's to bring everything together onto that. All that multiplicity of your life, when it comes together, it equals Tawheed. I'll give you an example. When Tawheed comes into your life, peace comes into your life. Tawheed is not just a theology though. It's not just an idea, it's not just a concept. Tawheed in your life is important. Let me give you an example. What does Tawheed in your life mean? That there's no contradiction in your life. Many a time you find that you're a different person outside. You're a different person with your family. You're a different person with your parents. You're a different person because there's no stability of Tawheed there. In the same way your mind is scattered. Every religion came to teach you unity, Tawheed. But you come to realize you can't focus more than 10 minutes. Because every couple of minutes you're on this system of yours. You take your phone out, you're scrolling. And this is why, if you look at it and see, this phone of yours is a double-edged sword. In the tradition it says, when Dajjal comes, Dajjal doesn't just come with something which is haram. Dajjal comes with something which is mubah. Mubah means it's allowed. But the fact is he uses that which is allowed to destroy you. Today your children can't focus for more than 10 minutes. It's a miracle that people sit here for 50 minutes, an hour to 2 hours. People can't focus anymore for 10 minutes. Why? Because the Tawheed of the mind is gone. You know what meditation was? The purpose of meditation in the Shariat that's come before, in the older faiths, in the older religions, were that the ability to focus upon one thing was known as meditation. When you meditate, for example, in any of the other faiths, the idea is that you focus upon a particular thing. Today people call it different things. People who are not following a faith, even they have mindfulness, for example. The idea was that the mind gets to unity. When that mind gets to unity, what happens then? A level of peace comes onto their heart. You find that they begin to transcend. You find that they begin to go above the physical world. This was the purpose. Your prayers are there for that purpose, to be able to focus. Your dhikr is there for that purpose. Your ishq is there for that purpose. If you want to know how to get to the 12th Imam, Ayatollah Kashmiri says that if you can't do an hour, I say forget an hour, you won't be able to do it. If for 10 minutes in the evening or in the morning at Fajr time, you can focus solely your heart onto Sahib al-Zaman, you'll see that a peace flows into your heart and a ma'rifah in your heart increases. Somebody said, they said, you haven't touched yet as-sarar of Imamah. Look, if you can understand what I'm saying, if there's one message you can take away today, understand what this message is. It is this thing. If you can even spend 10 minutes in the morning, no, let's say 10 minutes is too much. If you can spend 5 minutes in the morning, in these 10 days of Muharram, just focusing your thoughts, your heart and your mind solely on Sayyid al-Shuhada in the state of Muraqabah, I guarantee you your maqam will increase in 10 days. And if it doesn't, come and grab me. If it doesn't, I'll stop coming on the mimbar then. But I tell you, one of the things is this. People don't know how to talk to the Imam anymore. You know, people go to the ziyarah of Imam Hussein. They just read a book, they take a selfie and they go. That's not how you do it. Learn to focus your heart on Imam Hussein. Learn to talk to your Imam. You go to the door of your Imam, all you do is you read a book that you can't understand. You're looking this way, you're looking that way, you're looking at people walk in. But you're not focusing on the zari. Close your eyes and let these eyes take over. Let these eyes take over. Look, I've mentioned this tradition before in the city, but I'll mention it again. There was a companion of the sixth Imam known as Abu Basir. Abu Basir, the father of sight, was blind. Abu Basir was blind. One day the sixth Imam is sitting in Masjid al-Nabawi. As he sits in Masjid al-Nabawi, he says to one of his companions, he says, get up, go to the door, Baba Jibreel. Whoever walks in through the door, ask him, do you see Ja'far ibn Muhammad? He says, Mullah, you want me to do that? He says, yes, go and do that. He says, Mullah, but you're here. He says, go and ask him. Companion stands next to the door. A person walks in, he says, you know Ja'far ibn Muhammad? He looks up down, he says, oh, he's over there. One by one he begins to ask, and one by one people begin to reply. Some reply yes, some reply no, and in this way, one by one people start coming in. Eventually a time comes, a blind companion of the Imam, Abu Basir, is walking with a stick slowly as he walks in. This companion looks towards the Imam. He says, do I have to ask him as well? He says, I told you to ask everyone. He says, but Abu Basir is blind. He says, it doesn't matter, ask him. As Abu Basir walks in, this companion of the Imam says, Abu Basir, do you know where Ja'far ibn Muhammad is? He replies, yes, he's standing over there. He says, Abu Basir, how do you know? He said, Ma'rifat of the Imam is not with these eyes, it's with these eyes. This is why in Ghaybat Kubra, if you want to understand the ma'rifat of your Imam, learn to use these eyes. How do you use them? People ask me continuously. Today I'm going to tell you. How do you do that? Muraqabah. Allama Tabatabai told this. Al-Qadi told this. Some of our greatest scholars have told this. How do you do this? Look, I'm not going to give you the long way. I'm going to give you a shortcut that benefits your life. If 5 minutes after Fajr, you can focus your heart in these 10 days on Sayyid al-Shuhada. Take your heart to Karbala. Take your heart to Hussein. Take your heart to the Nur of Hussein. I tell you on the day of Ashura, your ma'rifah will increase. You'll come to understand the nur that you've not understood before. If for 5 minutes you focus on Sayyid al-Shuhada at Fajr time, then you'll see before you go to sleep. Focus 5 minutes on Imam al-Zaman. You're living Imam. Why? Because the dua of the 12th Imam is accepted faster than any of the other Imams. Why? Because he's Imam al-Hadir. He's Imam al-Hujjah. He's the Imam of this time. You want the solutions for your problems? You don't need to come to me. From the first of Muharram, messages come in. This issue, this issue, this issue. It's good. We're here, we'll help you. Don't worry about that. Whatever dua, dhikr, whatever you need, inshallah. But I'll give you the biggest solution. The biggest solution is this. Take that 5 minutes out. 5 minutes, focus your heart and speak to your Imam. Ya Sahib al-Zamana ghithni. Ya Sahib al-Zamana drikni. Focus on the 12th Imam. Call upon him with all of your heart. Hujjat ibn al-Hasan is there. You'll see that he comes to help you. You know why? Because he's a Shafiq father. Don't ever think that you're alone. Because the minute you start thinking that, you've moved away from the rahmah of the Imam. Call upon the Imam. You'll see the Imam is there. The reason why people commit a sin is because they don't understand the Imam is there. If people knew, they wouldn't slander other people. If people knew, they wouldn't backbite against other people. If people knew, they wouldn't commit sins. Your Imam is watching you. You call upon your Imam and you'll see. Your deeds need to be such. Look, let me give you a tradition. Now that we're on this, slowly I'm building something. Again, I still haven't left the introduction that we started 4 days ago. Unfortunately, I've still not been able to come onto my topic. And the reason being is this, that a groundwork needs to be set before we discuss something more complex. Ali ibn Mahdiyar, they say Ali ibn Mahdiyar wanted to see the Imam. 29 times, I believe, he went on Hajj just to see his Imam. 29 times. You know what happened? Doesn't see his Imam. He said, forget it, I'm not going to Hajj anymore. One night, Ilham comes onto him, come, you'll see your Imam. He says, fine. My only intention of going to Hajj is to see the Imam. Ali ibn Mahdiyar says, he saw all the rites of Hajj were finished. He was going around the Kaaba, he comes and sits down. He says, I came to see the Imam, I've not seen him, and he's feeling dejected. In the meantime, a man comes to him, he says, Ali ibn Mahdiyar, get ready. Why? Come and see your Imam. Come and see your Imam. He got up, he says, that was the day of Eid for me. As I went out of Mecca, there was a tent there. When I went into the tent, I chucked myself on the feet of the Imam. He says, Mawla, I've been waiting for you. Mawla replies, he says, no, I've been waiting for you. He says, but why 30 years? He says, because it's your deeds that keep you away from me. You find that the Shia do certain things that keep you away from your Imam. And he mentions 3 things. Inshallah, we'll discuss them in the nights to come. But one of those 3 things is this: when there's tension, problems between the believer. Look, one of those things I mentioned, or I said I was going to mention yesterday, I'll mention today. 2 days I've been looking to mention, but I've not been able to do so. There are 5 signs in Akhir al-Zaman in regards to the state of the Shia. The state of the Shia, how the Shia will become. One of them Ibn Daus mentions is this: you'll see in Akhir al-Zaman, in the last days, that the Shias will be divided politically, and in terms of their ideology, they'll be divided. When division falls, you come to realize that they've moved away from the sayings of the Imam. As I said on the first night or the second night, Hazrat Zahra alayhi salam says, in Fadak she said this: if you unite behind Ahlul Bayt, what happens? You will not divide. But if this nation in Akhir al-Zaman is divided on ideology, they have a lack of tolerance for each other, they're fighting one another, then what happens? You moved away from the teachings of Ahlul Bayt. You'll see this. You may have a different political understanding. You may have a different ideological understanding. But if you're fighting amongst each other, you move far away. There's a way in Islam of dealing with difference. And unfortunately today, our communities don't know how to deal with that. If you knew how to deal with that, the barakah of Allah would be upon you. But you come to realize that barakah is being removed. If I may say so, there's a la'an which is coming, which is destroying the communities. And why is that? Because the first thing that Ibn Daus says, or if you summarize it, is this: the hal of the Shia in Akhir al-Zaman will be this. They'll be divided on ideology. They'll be divided on politics. They'll expose themselves, and hence they'll be overcome by their enemies. Because here you find Allah says that if you're united, your enemies can't overcome you. Imam says himself. There's traditions on that. The 12th Imam says, I'm here to protect you. But Mawla, we're divided, or Mawla, we're overcome. Yes, you're overcome because you're divided. So be careful you're not. Look, if I can get this message to you, I've done my part. In this city, for example, mashallah, all of us are ma'soom in the city, so there's no division. But let's talk about outside of the city, where people are not ma'soom. For example, why is there division? Because we've forgotten the template of how to disagree. You know the most important thing in Ghaybat al-Kubra is? In Ghaybat al-Sughra, the Nawab Arba had one policy. The most important thing was the unity of the Shia. Above and beyond any unity is the unity of the Shia. We We've forgotten that. We're willing to make unity with everyone outside, but we forget the unity from inside. There should never be a time where somebody says, I'm Akhbari and I'm Asuli. It doesn't matter if you're Akhbari or not. Allama Majlisi may have been Akhbari. Khura Amali may have been Akhbari. Sahib Hidayat may have been Akhbari. Bahbahani may have been Asuli. It doesn't matter. The most important thing is, even if you have differences in theology, and today, that's not the big thing today. Today, the politics is the big thing. If you have a difference of opinion in politics, that's it, you're a kafir in the eyes of Allah. There's no patience left. If you have a difference in ideology, all of a sudden, they make you the Yazid of the time. And they themselves become Hussein of the time. Right? You're already belittling Imam Hussein. You're already belittling the whole system. Believe me, brothers, there's only one Hussein. There's no Hussein of the time. The only Hussein of the time is the 12th Imam. There's nobody else. And there's no Yazid of the time. Because Yazid was full darkness. That darkness that killed Hussein ibn Ali is not in this time. Why is that? People say, there's a Karbala happening every day. There's no Karbala happening every day. Imam has already said, La yawmika ya Aba Abdullah. There's only one Karbala. There's no more than Karbala. Yes, there's death taking place. Yes, there's destruction taking place. But Hussein is not defined by death and destruction. When a person gets killed, God forbid if something happens, I'm not belittling it. God forbid trial and tribulation does come. It is haram to kill anybody. It's haram to do anything bad. But let's say, God forbid, if you see an oppressed person in this lifetime, what happens? Their blood is being spilled. Hussein's blood is double Allah. There's a difference there. When Hussein's blood is shed, it's different from when mine and your blood. Mine and your blood doesn't hold the holiness of Hussein's blood. Hussein's blood hits the ground, it becomes khaq shifa. My blood hits the ground, it becomes najis. Medicine, man. Hussein is different. You can't compare Hussein to anybody else. The other day I said, Hussein's not like a Gandhi figure. I'm not belittling Gandhi. Gandhi had what he did. But if he gained inspiration from Imam Hussein, that's different. Imam Hussein for me and you is Insani Kamil. Imam Hussein is Damullah. Imam Hussein is Wajhullah. Imam Hussein is Hujjatullah. Imam Hussein is different. Imam Hussein cannot be compared. So there's no Hussein of the time. Hussein of the time can only be Imam Ma'soom's son. And there's no Yazid of the time. Why? Because if Hussein is light, then it required that much darkness to kill Imam Hussein. Najasat of Yazid is second to none. There is no one with that type of najasat. There's a difference between a person who can kill Imam Ma'soom. Not everyone can do that. There's a difference. This is why it was necessary for somebody like Ibn Muljim to be there. Otherwise, Ali wouldn't have reached Shahad. You might ask me, so what are you saying? Look, understand this. Ali is Taharat. Ali, the Nur of Ali is something which we can't understand. Why? The Batin of Ali manifests the Nur of Allah. The Batin of Ali is the Dhuhurat of Allah itself. Ali cannot be killed. So therefore, a person who is najis to the extent of maximum is the only person. There's one poet that said that Ibn Muljim's hand was important. Why? Ali couldn't have been killed on the battlefield. So it requires Ali to be in sajda. Believe me. Ali cannot be killed on the battlefield. The highest maqam of death is shahada. Ali is at the highest maqam, so Ali has to have shahada. But Ali can't be killed on the battlefield, so therefore Ali has to be in a situation to be killed. Where is he? He's in Masjid al-Kufa, where one unit of prayer is 1,000. And in Masjid al-Kufa, the best thing you can do is sajda. Ali is in sajda because the best time is Fajr time. And the best state is the state of fasting. And the best time is Laylatul Qadr. Ali, Laylatul Qadr, sajda, fasting, head away towards Allah. In that state, the most najis, la'een person in creation comes forward to kill Ali. Rasulullah didn't call Yazid even that, but he called Ibn Muljim that. Why? Because Ali's maqam is greater than Hussein's. Imam Hussein himself says that. He says, my father's maqam is greater than mine. Right? Look at Sid Hashim Bahrani narrates. Look at it and see. What does he say? He says, one day Amirul Mu'mineen is sitting there. Imam Hussein is sitting there. Imam Hussein asks, who do you love more, me or my father? What does Rasulullah? In fact, no. Somebody asks, who do you love more, Ali or Hussein? So what is Imam Hussein? Sitting there. Rasulullah says, tell your fadail. Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he begins his fadail, you look at it pages long. Who is Ali? Ali is this, and Ali is this, and Ali is this. I wish I could go into it, but I've been told that my time is short. We've got to finish within 50 minutes because otherwise the program is going until midnight and you've got work tomorrow. But I'll summarize all of it in one. When Imam Hussein's turn came, you know what Imam Hussein says? He says to his father, he says, Father, your fadail is greater, but my nasab is greater. He says, your fadail is greater, but my nasab is greater. My nasab is greater than your nasab. He says, why? He says, because your father is Abu Talib, but my father is Ali ibn Abi Talib. Look at it and see. He says, your father is Abu Talib, but my father is Ali ibn Abi Talib. He says, you're my father, so my nasab is greater. Who's your mother? Your mother may be Fatima bint Asad that Kaaba opened up to. But my mother's Fatima to Zahra. And there's no mother like that. Your grandfather, he says, who's my grandfather? My grandfather is Rasulullah. My grandfather's Abu Talib. Your grandfather's not like my grandfather. My grandfather's Abu Talib. My grandfather's Imran. Ali Imran is all in front of us. My grandfather's this. My nasab is greater. Your fadail is greater. At least fadail is greater. He says, Father, your fadail. Amir al-Mu'mineen kisses Imam Hussein. So imagine Ibn Muljim. What is Ibn Muljim there for? Najasa to the extreme. Today we call somebody Yazid. You've not done it justice. You call him a zalim, yes, but Yazid is full of najasat. And greater than Yazid's najasat is Ibn Muljim's najasat. Rasulullah himself said is la'in. Why Ali's fadail is greater. So the greater the man is, the more najasat the person has inside of them. Remember what we said yesterday. Shaitan has darkness inside, najasat inside, that increases. Ibn Muljim was darker. There was some najasat which is even greater than shaitan. Why? Shaitan is from the jinn. So his capability to reach the highest levels is limited. But also his capability to reach the lowest levels is limited. Only insan has that he can become greater than angels and more lower than animals, haywan. Bear this in mind. You can become worse than shaitan, or you can become greater than the angels. And even shaitan knows that the name of Ahlul Bayt, Isma Adam, lies in that. Look, I'm going to give you a narration. Again, I still haven't come on to what I wanted to discuss. All this muqaddamas so that we can take all of you on a journey. When I, inshallah, begin, we begin. So that gets your mind stabilized. Look, if Allama Mustambit hadn't narrated this, I wouldn't. Ayatollah Khui's son-in-law. Allama Mustambit brings a tradition forward. Hashim Bahraini brings the same tradition forward before him. Right? Madinatul Ma'ajiz is the book, go and have a look at it. In that it says that there used to be a jinn lady. She used to come to Rasulullah, she converted at the hands of Rasulullah. A jinn lady. Every day she would come to Rasulullah and Rasulullah would teach her. It so happened that one day she disappears. For 40 days she stops coming, or so. 40 days later, Rasulullah, when he sees her, he asks her, he says, what was the issue? She replies, she says, something happened that I went somewhere because I had something to do. She says, but when I went there, and this is Alam and Malakut, the world which is above this. Alam and Malakut has forms, but it has no matter. The best way I can describe it is when you go into the sleep realm. You can see that biryani of last night that you had in your dream as well. But you can't physically feel it. You can even taste it in your dream. It goes in your stomach, the burning sensation in your stomach. If you're not used to spices, you feel that as well in your stomach while you're dreaming. But the physical matter is not there. This is also a prerequisite for Alam al-Barzakh. When you die, when you go into Alam al-Barzakh, all of this is apparent there. The one thing that's not there is matter. So the jinns reside in the world of Malakut. That the matter is there, but the form's not. The form's not there, but the matter. Form's there, the matter is not there. She said, when I was going into Alam al-Malakut, I saw that there was a river. In the river there was a big stone or rock, you could say. There was a man sitting, or there was a form sitting on this rock. And all I could hear was, he was reciting, Allah, for the sake of Muhammad and Ali and Fatima and Hassan and Hussein. Now, what will shock you is who the person is. So far you're with me, but what's going to shock you is who the person is. She says, I asked this person, how do you know these names? Who are you? In the tradition, 2 names are given. Firstly, he turns around and says, I'm Harith. In the other tradition, it says, I'm Iblis. What does that mean? It was Shaitan basically sitting there. Shaitan, when she asked, why are you mentioning, you're Shaitan, why'd you mention these names? He replies, he says, I've seen Alam-e-Quds. I know there's Isma Adam in these names. When I want something from God, I start to recite these names. Even me as Shaitan, though I've lost hope in Allah, understands what the 5 names are. Today you and me are debating if we should say Ya Ali. We're debating if we should say Ya Hassan. We're debating if we say Ya Hussein. Think about it. Let me tell you something. 2 days ago, in fact yesterday, let me tell you something. Yesterday, because of the work, the outreach work we do, we're friends in every... Yesterday, I would give you the name if I wasn't on the member. One of the biggest Deobandi leaders, and I have the voicemails on my phone. Afterwards I could show you. He voice messages me. And he says one thing to me, Deobandi, Taliban are Deobandi. Imagine what they are. He messages me, a Deobandi leader, right? He himself is not Taliban, but he's a big leader. He messages and he says to me this. He says, I know that you're going to be reciting the majlis of Imam Hussein. In that majlis, pray for me because my leg is hurting. Ma'arif of a Deobandi. He says, and I want to sit with you and I want to chat with you. But I know it's the 10 days of Muharram and the 10 days of Huzn. I thought to myself, my God, this person has more Ma'arif of Imam Hussein than some of our own people do. Why? Dialogue. Sometimes people are, why do you talk to this person for? Why do you talk to that person for? The reason I talk is maybe something in their heart may open up towards Ahlul Bayt. My job is done then. I remember a number of years ago, in fact this goes back 2016, it goes back 9 years. It's a very prominent Jewish leader in the United Kingdom, of Iraqi descent. We became very close friends. My intention is never to convert somebody, and their intention not to convert me. As I always say, the real estate in Jannah is sufficient. But no, jokes aside, my intention is never to do that. Why? Because everybody's on their own. Let them do what they want to do. But my intention is only just to tell them the akhbar of Ali Muhammad. Brothers, believe me, this person was in Baghdad. I knew he went to Baghdad. 2 days later, he messages me on WhatsApp. He says, I as a Jew am standing next to the shrine of Hussein. And he showed me the picture, sent the picture over. He goes, I've come to pay homage to Imam Hussein as well. I said, but brother, you're Jewish. He said, I may be, but our discussions and my Iraqi background tells me that Hussein is for everyone. My job is done then. Our job as followers of Ahlul Bayt is just to take the person close to Ahlul Bayt. Ahlul Bayt do their job after that. Amir al-Mu'mineen does the job after that. So when people ask, they say, well, why do you talk to everyone? You talk to a Hindu, you talk to Jews, you talk to... Firstly, because I like to talk to people. Why? Because I want people to know that we're good people. We're not bad people. We're peace-loving people. The ways of the Imam was to bring peace in society. Every Shia should be talking to people. I know, for example, your center, you talk to all sorts of people. In my majalis, a number of years ago, there were 6 in my majalis. Hindus come in my majalis. The other day, there were Sunnis who were here. Right? Why do they come? Because we don't talk anything that hurts people's hearts. Our message is a message of love. Come to Hussein. Imam Hussein is a person who doesn't send anyone away. People walk in here tomorrow, no, not here specifically, but you've got centers. No, this is Najis, this is Tahir, this is that. People debate whether we should invite other people or not. Look at Hussein ibn Ali and see. Hussein ibn Ali calls everyone. I remember in 2017 when my team was speaking to Shri Shri Ravi Shankar, the biggest guru in India with 350 million followers. If there's 350 million Shias, there's 350 million Hindus who follow him. You know what he said? He said that I've been to Karbala 3 times to Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein doesn't stop anyone from coming. It doesn't matter who that person is. I've seen, and I'll tell you something, 2 years ago I was in the underground in London. A padri, a priest came to me, and since then he's been on the TV channels, Ahlul Bayt, and all these other TV, Imam Hussein and everything else. In the underground, he stops me. He says, "You don't recognize me." And I was thinking, I was dressed up and had a cap on, so nobody recognized me in the underground. He says, "But I recognize you." He says, "I want to tell you something." I said, "What is it?" He said, "I went to Karbala. I'm a priest. I went to Karbala." I said, "Really?" He said, "I had an experience I'd like to share with you." Right? I said, "What's your experience?" He said, "When I got there, when I saw millions of people, I felt scared. Look at all of these people. When I came inside the shrine of Imam Hussein on the day of Arba'in," he says, "I thought, I can't touch the zari of Imam Hussein. There's too many people. So I closed my eyes and I said, Hussein, if you're there, and if you want me to touch your shrine, then do something." He says, "My eyes were closed and somehow I was pushed. I found that my hand was touching a zari." Imam Hussein doesn't look at whether it's a Christian, a Jew, a Hindu, a Sikh, whoever it is. Imam Hussein looks at you. If you're there for him, he'll take you to him. So bear this in mind. Why do you reduce Imam Hussein to just something small? No, Imam Hussein is for everyone in the world. 8 billion human beings, Imam Hussein has opened his door and said, "Come to me." Why do you restrict Imam Hussein? Why do you move Imam Hussein from people? Why do you say to people, "You're Yazid"? No, everybody should be Hussein. Don't say that to people. If a person doesn't know and you call him Yazid, he's never going to come to Imam Hussein. The problem is that your ways of Amr bil Ma'ruf is not the way of Ahlul Bayt. Your way is the way of Khawarij. If you have a disagreement with a person and you feel that they're wrong, by shouting at them, by swearing at them, by ostracizing them, is not going to achieve anything. What did Imam Hassan and Hussein do? When a person came from Sham and swore at Amir al-Mu'mineen, swearing at Amir al-Mu'mineen is bigger than any sin. Is it bigger than any sin? There's no sin you can do in this life which is bigger than swearing at Amir al-Mu'mineen. Why? Because it's like, can't know you've sworn at Allah. What did Imam Hussein do? What did Imam Hassan do? He listened to him. And then what did he do? He said, "Brother, it seems you've come from a very far distance. Come to my house. Have some food. Let me give you some fresh clothes." Would you do that? You wouldn't do that. If a person goes against your ideology in Akhir Zaman, you're prepared to call them deviant in every single name under the sun. Don't we see this all the time? What did Imam Hassan do? He says, "Come in." 3 days later, because of the akhlaq of Imam Hassan, when this Shami was leaving, you know what he says? He says, "When I came to Medina, I was the biggest enemy of Ali and Awlad Ali. When I leave now, I'm the biggest friend of Ali and Awlad Ali." Bear that in mind. Look, I still haven't said what I wanted to say, honestly. Today I wanted to speak more about the first thing that I mentioned, which was that Nur Ma'rifat of Imam Hussein. I'm not being able to cover it. I wish I had. Inshallah, we'll do it tomorrow. I'm just looking at the time. Look, my time is run out. Time is going quickly. I've not been able to cover it. Tomorrow I want to cover it then. I want to finish these signs of Akhir Zaman, the state of the Shia as well. But mostly I want to look at the Nur. How does that Nur increase? How does it decrease? As I said to you, if there's one thing you can take away today, please take this away. Make the connection with your 12th Imam. For 5 minutes every day, focus on it. For 5 minutes every morning, focus on Imam Hussein. You'll see your ma'rifah increases. People ask for practical tips. You will thank me for this. In fact, don't forget thanking me. I don't want your thanks. All I want is for you to connect with Imam Hussein. It doesn't make a difference to me. But no, the only difference it makes is if my Imam is happy, then I'm happy. That's what it is. If you're connecting to Imam, we're happy. Why? Because a Shia as a person, he's happy when the Imam is happy, sad when the Imam is sad. What makes Zahra cry should make you cry. What makes Zahra happy is what should make you happy. You know, sometimes I think about this. One mother is so karima. Today when people go to Karbala, you see the gold and the silver there. Even though Imam Hussein was butchered, but Zahra made sure that people still come there. When you go to the shrine, many years ago Ayatollah Sistani said something. He said, don't look at the gold and the silver, the body is still broken inside. For 1 second, think about Hussein and think about a broken body. I don't need to recite anything, just the name Hussein and the pain of Hussein is sufficient for people to cry. You go today to Karbala, you see the shrines, you see the gold and the silver. You go to Kadhimiya, your Imam was in jail for 14 years, but when you go there, what do you see? You still see the gold and the silver. Samara was destroyed, but even there's shears to go there. You go to Masjid al-Nabawi where the Prophet's grave is there. For every son of Zahra, they still have something. But today, if I was to ask you where the grave of that mother is, nobody knows. There isn't even a person to go and light a candle on the grave. Imagine. There's not even a person to light a candle on a grave. Do you know how important it is for somebody to light a candle? I'll give you a story so that you understand. 2007, there was a woman in Jaunpur in India. You know what she used to do? She used to go and give Sabil of Imam Hussein to people. Her husband had died. She only had one son. The son wasn't married. He had no children. One day came in 2006 when her son died. One mother, one child. Nothing after that. What does a mother do? Every morning she would go to the grave of her son. When she went to the grave of her son, she would light a candle. What does a mother do? What does she have? Everything in her life was her son. The sign of her husband was her son. Sometimes I remember Qasim when I hear these things. Sometimes I think how Qasim's mother would have been. But anyway, let me complete this. Every day she would come and light a candle. They say when the moon of Muharram came, the last day she went to the grave of her son, she says, son, from today onwards, I'm not going to come to your grave. For the next 10 days, I'm going to mourn over Hussein. Look, mothers know. I've said this, you can hear. Some mother is crying over there. Because she understands, because she's a mother. She says, for 10 days, I'm not going to come. For 10 days, she used to give the Sabil of Imam Hussein the water. On the 6th of Muharram is when the procession in Jaunpur comes. She was there giving water. She was waiting. The day Ashura finished, on the 11th of Muharram, she goes running to the grave of her son. You know what she sees when she runs to the grave of her son? She sees that there was light coming from the grave of her son. She was perplexed. She was thinking, what are these candles? As she's counting the candles, she sees that there were 10 candles on the grave of her son. And then she looks closer. She sees that there was a woman dressed in black sitting next to her grave. As she comes, mother's a mother. You know what she says? She says, oh woman, I think you're on the wrong grave. This grave is the grave of my son, not the grave of your son. This woman again doesn't say anything. Again, she says, oh woman, move away from the grave. This isn't the grave of your son. This is the grave of my son. When the third time she says it, this woman looks up and she says, no, I'm at the right grave. She says, why? She says, you remembered my son for 10 days, I've remembered your son for 2 days. She says, you remembered my son for 10 days, I remembered your son for 10 days. This is how a mother is when she remembers her children. Today I've been asked to recite the Masaib of the Tiflan in Muslims. 2 children, 2 innocent children. Shall I tell you how innocent children are? Look, if I can narrate it, I'll narrate it to you. Have you ever been to Sham? Let me just tell you how children are. Have you been to Sham? In Sham, there's a grave of a 4-year-old girl. I remember many years ago going to that grave, before 2011. 2009 was the year. In fact, before that, I remember. When you go to the grave of that 4-year-old girl, you feel loneliness there. There's a loneliness there even today. Even today, you come to know what the ghurba is, what ghareeb is. 4-year-old girl is a ghareeb over there. You can feel the loneliness over there. As we went there, looking at the grave, looking at the zareeb, there was a small boy there. The boy had a teddy bear in his hand. His father was sitting there with him. When his father wasn't watching, the small boy went, he put the teddy bear next to the grave, next to the zareeb of this 4-year-old girl. When he came back, his father said, "Why did you do that for?" You know what he replied? Even a child understands. You know what this child said? The child replied, he just said one thing. He said, "Father, I have you, but I feel this girl is very lonely today." Imagine what Ahlul Bayt must be feeling when they see the loneliness of their children. Imagine that. You know, they say Muslim bin Aqil, when he came with 2 of his small sons. They say Muslim bin Aqil went to lead the prayers. When he turned around, those thousands of people had disappeared. There was no one there. In the movement of people, they say the children were separated from Muslim bin Aqil. And as 2 children begin to walk, they see all the doors are being closed upon them. And eventually a time comes when people are saying, "Kill Muslim, take Muslim, grab Muslim." The smaller brother asks the older brother, "Which Muslim are they talking about?" The older brother, the tradition says, "Remain quiet." He says, "Brother, you can't even hide it from me. The fact is that they're after our father." A time comes, these 2 children go towards the river. They see that there's a tree there and they climb on the tree. When they're on the tree, both of these children are very scared. They're shaking, they're very scared. They say a woman comes and she sees the reflection of these children. This woman asks, she says, "Children, why are you here for? What are you? Who are you?" The older brother replies, he says, "Look, this is Kufa, but I'll tell you anyway, we're the children of Muslim bin Aqil." She says, "That's my Mawla, come to my house." Takes both of the children and takes them to her house. She says, "Listen, my son is a mal'oon, Harith is a mal'oon. Let me put you on top of the house." They say that both of these children, when they're on top of the house, they're very upset. Both of them, they lie down, both of them go to sleep. Both of them see the same dream. What is the dream? Amir al-Mu'mineen comes and says, "My children come back to me." Both of them realize it's their last day, so they began to cry. Children cry. As they began to cry, what happens? They say this mal'oon comes in. Mother's there. She says, "What do you want?" He says, "Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad has said, whoever brings these 2 children, there's 5,000 dirhams for that." All of a sudden, he hears crying. He gets up. He goes upstairs. He sees 2 children are trembling, hugging each other. He says, "Who are you?" He says, "We're the children of Muslim bin Aqil." He says, "I've been looking for you everywhere." You know what the tradition says? He grabs both of them by the hair and he begins to pull them. He grabs both of them by the hair and he begins to pull them. He says, "You 2 children are here?" He says, "Let me take you somewhere." He takes a servant and he's dragging these children towards the Furat. And as he takes them, he looks towards them. He says to a slave, he says, "Go and cut their heads." The slave says, "I can't do that. I've never seen beautiful children like this before." He says, "I can't do that. I've never seen beautiful children." He says to his son, "Then you cut their heads." He says, "I can't do that." So this mal'oon says something. He says, "I'll cut their heads." And so he looks up and he says, "Take your shirts off so I can cut your head." Tradition says the younger brother begins to fumble his hands and then he begins to cry. He says, "I've never taken off my shirt before. My mother would undo my buttons to take off my shirt." He says the older brother comes, he helps him undo the shirt. And then after that, the older brother comes forward and he says, "Kill me first." He says, "Why you?" He says, "Because my mother said that the older brother is like a father. Kill me first, then kill my younger brother." But the younger brother comes forward. He says, "No, kill me first." He says, "Why?" He says, "Because I've heard that the younger brother is like a son." This mal'oon says, he says, I'll kill both of you at the same time. He grabs both of the heads. He takes a sword out. He cuts both of their heads. As he brings them to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad looks at the heads and he says, what kind of a mal'oon are you? Look at the beautiful faces. But he asks them, you know what he says? He says, why are these faces red for? Why are they red for? He says, when I cut their neck, blood came. Like you cut a sheep, the blood flows. He says, the blood flowed on their faces. He says, no, but there's also redness here. You know what he replies? He said, I was slapping these children before I cut their heads. I was slapping these children before I cut their heads. Remember this, even Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad takes pity. Now understand this. The tradition says, when a 4-year-old girl was slapped on the face so hard, Imam Zayn al-Abidin, when he looked up, look, I can't even narrate it. Imagine what the head of Hussein must be feeling. Now imagine this. You know what that 4-year-old girl says when the head of Imam Hussein was brought to her for the final time? She says something. She says, Father, forgive me that I stutter in my speech, Father. I'm stuttering when I'm speaking to you. Sham-e Ghariba, when Shimmer slapped me on my face, it was so hard that from that day onwards, every time I try and speak, I stutter. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad says, he says, bring water, clear the face so I can see them. When they put water on the face, hair started to fall down. Hair started to fall down. He says, why is it that their hair is shredding? Why is this? He says, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, I grabbed them by the hair and I was pulling them. Now understand this. When you go to Sayyidah Ruqayya, back of the Ziyarat Nama says, when women were giving ghusl and kafan to Sakina, 3 times they ran away. The first time when they ran, they said, Sajjad, this girl's body is, you can see that there's fungus on this girl's body. Says, that's not fungus. Shimmer would slap her. Her body went green. Her body went red. Second time again they came. You know, second time, they said every time we try and take off her shirt, her skin starts to come off. But the third time when they came, they said there's an infection, there's a disease on this girl. Says, why? Every time we pour water, her hair begins to shred. Imam Zayn al-Abidin cried. He said, that's not that. Yazid would grab her by the hair and pull her. And every time he pulled her, Sakina would try and undo it. But you found eventually she lost the energy. She'd be dangling there as shimmer. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa